Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back here for another episode of the podcast the day after the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles whipping the Kansas City Chiefs last night to take the Super Bowl title. Cam Jurgens, the Nebraska Cornhusker, played a big role in that up front, playing the center position. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Nebraska basketball with another big win over Ohio State. The coaching staff going to get finalized this week, and Nebraska with the sixth best odds to win the Big Ten. So we're going to kind of weigh in on that as well. Before we get into that, please make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you doing on Super Bowl Monday?
I'm doing good. I ate a lot of food, so that was good. I ate a lot of really good food, and I was hoping to see a little bit more of a competitive game, but it was great to see the Eagles win, and in a game that they kind of, despite some crucial calls early, they were able to take control of.
Yeah, I mean they dominated, especially up front. I saw a stat where they didn't blitz one time. They were one of like four teams in the Super Bowl era to not blitz, and that's the thing. If you can get pressure, people always say it, but if you can get pressure with the front four and just play coverage, that's how you beat a great quarterback, and that's what they did against the Chiefs. It wasn't there wasn't anything fancy about it. They just physically dominated their offensive line, and the Eagles on the other side of it, they were able to pick up the Chiefs blitz. I mean, that was the thing is, Spagnuolo blitzed and blitzed and blitzed and never got to Jalen Hurts. And he was able to find all of his receivers. And, he played a spectacular game. Saquon Barkley, didn't really have that big of an impact. He did run the ball decently well. They were able to, kind of control the clock. But, it was a great win for the Eagles. So congrats to them. And maybe let's slow the roll of Patrick Mahomes being the greatest NFL player ever, because he still has a long way to go to catch one Tom Brady in the old quarterback department.
And Travis Kelce has a long way to catch Rob Gronkowski. And to be fair, even Kelce has admitted that Gronkowski is the best tight end of all time. So, I'm happy for Jalen Hurts, and I'm happy for the Eagles. I think they played a complete game, and like you said, Saquon Barkley didn't have a game changing performance, but the supporting cast around Hurts really did their job, and it also shows that if you have talented receivers and a solid supporting cast around your quarterback, you can win football games. And so there were a lot of lessons to learn, or reaffirmed at least last night, and it made me think about Nebraska football a little bit.
Well, I think one thing that's interesting is if you look at the Eagles, their draft classes, almost all their draft picks. I know they picked Cooper DeJean this year, later, but a lot of their draft picks have been offensive and defensive linemen, pass rushers, big dudes, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, all those guys. So I mean, those picks and investing in the trenches, it matters. It pays off. You see it almost every year. The teams, and it's been an underrated part of Kansas City's run is, their offensive line has been spectacular, and so is their defensive line, Mike Jones and all those, or Chris Jones, excuse me, and all those guys. So, winning in the trenches, I mean, having a quarterback is great, but the second best thing, the thing you need, I think, outside of, great receivers, great cornerbacks, whatever, you need to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball. So, and I think that is something that we're seeing reflected in recruiting, and I think we've seen that, with Nebraska, just looking at this transfer portal class, look at where they invested, left tackle, or, at least right tackle with Elijah Pritchett. I mean, offensive line with Rocco Spindler, Williams Nwaneri. They invest, Dason McCullough. They invested in guys that can protect the quarterback and get after the quarterback. And that's what you need to do, really. You need to have a great quarterback. You need to have great O-line and D-line play.
And they invested in a good secondary, and that's something the Eagles had as well. And you mentioned, they're good defensive picks. I think the secondary, obviously, DeJean, Kelsey Ringo for the Eagles, and Nebraska did that with Andrew Marshall and Jameer Khan even, and those guys. So building your defense from the defensive line outward is a smart strategy, and Nebraska has certainly done that in the transfer portal, much like the Eagles did in the draft and so forth. So, it was a lot of similarities to building an NFL team. Nebraska has made those same strides this offseason, and that includes the coaching staff too. They've built an NFL style coaching staff, so we'll see if it pays off.
And it was good. We should mention before we move on and get into more Nebraska stuff. It was great to see Cam Jurgens, be part of that. He, was the starting center last night. Obviously, was drafted to, replace Jason Kelsey, and Jason Kelsey even talked on the preview show, or I mean, not wasn't the first time, but he talked about kind of scouting Cam Jurgens and how he thought he was such a perfect fit, kind of the closest thing to himself. And Cam Jurgens had a hell of a game last night. Was a Pro Bowl selection this year, so he has a very bright future. And it was good to see him. Always good to see former Huskers get a Super Bowl ring.
Nick Gates and O'Shawn Mathis do as well, I believe. And so
that's right. Yep, that's right.
And so I mean, I know I'll let you be the proper one, but it's amazing what you could do when you don't have shitty coaching. I mean, I hated Greg Austin, and I didn't think Greg Austin was good at all. And now Cam Jurgens goes to Philly and learns under Jason Kelsey and a very stout Philadelphia Eagles offensive line for many, many years. They take pride in the trenches, and it was really great to see him play well. And I think one of the things that's really impressed me in watching him play over the last couple of weeks, and not just the last couple of weeks, but overall, is his physicality and his run blocking and the way he can drive defensive linemen back basically into the ground. And he's really, really done a nice job. There's been a sentiment that some players play better, away from their college programs and develop in the NFL rather than develop in college. And Cam Jurgens is definitely that guy. I'll be the first to say I was completely wrong about him entering the draft and, thinking at the time he would be a bust. I'll eat crow on that one, and I'm so happy to see him do so well. I really am.
Yeah, it's great to see him develop really well. So good luck to him next season as the Eagles try to defend their title. But to switch over now to the other big thing that happened in the world of Nebraska on Sunday, the Ohio State Buckeyes came into the vault and they had an 8-point lead on Nebraska in the second half. Things were getting a little dicey, but Juwan Gary, kind of brought it back. Bryce Williams took over, scored 24 points. Berkey Buikatunzel had 15. Of course, sprained his ankle, which wasn't great. I'm not sure what that's looking like, but another
missed a couple games.
Another quad one victory for the Huskers, their fourth win in a row, their third quad one win in 4 games, and this team is trending up. So what are your thoughts on another big win for this team, for Nebraska basketball?
I feel like this team is very deep, and I think, again, the play of Andrew Morgan, really shown yesterday. I thought Braxton Meade did pretty well with his extended minutes, and I think Berkey is gonna miss some time, so we'll see who steps up there. But Bryce Williams is just that guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he wins another conference award for Player of the Week this week or something. So, he is. You talk about good transfer portal finds in football. He has been one of Fred Hoiberg's best finds in the transfer portal. I'd put him up there with Casey Tominaga as far as most impactful transfer portal finds. And he's a stud. He's a stud. The way he can shoot the mid-range jumper, the way he can draw contact and get to the line, the way he kind of stabilizes the offense. And he did that again on Sunday in what was a very good Ohio State team. I know their record is similar to ours, and they're not undefeated or whatever, but they're a very solid team. So that was a really, really good win. And Bruce Thornton, man, how many more years does he have left? Is this his last year? Because I don't want to see him ever again. He's so good and so scary.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he might have another year. I can't quite remember, though. He might be a senior this year. But yeah, it was a really big, victory for this team. And yeah, Bryce Williams has been a spectacular player. I mean, how will he not be first team All Big Ten this year? And when's the last time Nebraska had a guy like that? I mean, Casey Tominaga didn't get that. So, I mean, in terms of impact, like there's no question to me that Bryce Williams has had a bigger impact this year than Casey Tominaga did. Tominaga had more of like I would say like he was more of a cultural phenomenon. Like I think he was more exciting, and there was just like he was like a phenomenon, I guess, in some ways, in the way he hit shots and stuff. But Bryce Williams, I mean, the dude's what, 6'8", 6'9". I mean, like he can do a lot of things. He's gonna get drafted in the NBA. I would be shocked if he's not. But yeah, I mean, he was spectacular. I thought Berkey really maybe had his best game as a Husker. Yeah. 3-3. He hit 2 in the second half, got the shooter's bounce on the 1, but 3 assists. I thought he did a good job on the boards. And so I really think that I'm really worried about losing him, because I felt like that lineup, which was the 7th different starting lineup that Fred Hoiberg has used, but you had Berkey at the 5, Gary at the 4, Williams, Sam Hoiberg, and Wooster. And I thought that just fit really well. Now that there's some teams that it's going to be tough to play Gary at the 4, but I just like him there because you can see it's very difficult to keep him away from the basket. Those when he's being guarded by those 4s, he can get to the bucket, and you could see that a little bit yesterday. I just and that's the other thing too is Bryce Williams gets a lot of credit and he deserves it. I mean, he's been carrying this team offensively, but like to me, Juwan Gary is still the engine that makes this team go. Like if he's on his game, if he's getting steals, if he's just doing just being that junkyard dog and hitting shots. But I mean, yesterday was a prime example of it. Nebraska was down by 8 points. Ohio State comes out, hits that 3, and who is the guy that answers the bell? Juwan Gary, right back on the other end, hits a 3, then gets it within 2. Then Berkey tied it. But, like when Gary, when he went out with foul trouble, and I know Bryce Williams sat for a little bit too, but like when Gary went out, this team's completely different. So,
yeah.
I mean, as good as Bryce Williams is, if Juwan Gary had played more than 26 minutes, this game would not have been close. So, those two guys, I mean, I think those two guys, I can't really separate the two of them. They have been incredible during this stretch. I mean, on both ends of the floor, Juwan Gary's just got to be one of the most annoying defenders in the Big Ten. And when he's playing like that, like this team is just so different. When he's going up and getting rebounds and just doing all those little things that get missed in the box score. That's who Juwan Gary is. And when he's scoring and doing all the other stuff, like this team really is playing at their best. Yeah, I don't know what Fred Hoiberg's going to do without Berkey. I would say, Andrew Morgan. And man, it's really, you look at yesterday, they had 7 guys that played double-digit minutes. So they only, they had 5 dudes play on the bench, but Braxton Mee played 7 minutes. Aaron Eulis played 2. Cale Jacobson played 1. So if you take Berkey out of that mix, you're really, your rotation's getting pretty thin there. So hopefully they can do some work on that ankle and get him ready. But yeah, I mean, they're in a great spot. And I saw, John Rothstein was talking about like Nebraska needs to win if they win all their home games, they'll be in a good spot. I don't even think they need to do that. I think if this team,
I don't think so either.
I think they need to win 10 games, 10 Big Ten games, 9 regular season, 1 in the tournament. If they win their last 4 home games, they're definitely in. But yeah, I think 9 and 11 based. I mean, right now you look at the Big Ten. I think Nebraska's like tied for 6th right now, and we're 6 and 7 or 6th or 7th. So there's only a handful of teams with a winning record, even in the Big Ten. So I feel like Nebraska has a very strong resume. There's not very many teams in college basketball right now that have 5 quad 1 wins, and Nebraska's one of them. So,
and you mentioned Braxton Mee, and I was encouraged by his performance on Sunday because we've seen his minutes go down over the past couple of games, and he struggled offensively. But I thought he did a much better job on Sunday, getting to the basket, kind of. Not even necessarily getting the rebounds, but providing that, size inside the paint. And, we saw an uptick in his minutes yesterday. So that's good to see. Like I said, I know Nebraska basketball fans have been frustrated with him at times, but, his level of activity on Sunday and, his contributions were definitely noticed. And I'm willing to bet that we're going to see an uptick in his minutes over the next couple games. Due to depth and injury, and also the positive performance from Sunday.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where Fred goes. I think that Andrew Morgan's played well, and it might just depend on different matchups too. So looking at the Big Ten standings right now, Maryland's coming up on Thursday, and so you've got. So yeah, Nebraska's tied for 7th. So I mean, they were at one point tied for 16th, and right now they're tied for 7th place with Ohio State. USC's right there at 5 and 7. So I mean, they're really not in a bad spot. This they've got another game against Maryland. Basically, if you look at their schedule, I think like their next 3 or 4 games are all quad 1 opportunities.
Yeah.
So Maryland at home. At Northwestern, at Penn State, and then home against Michigan. So those are all quad 1s, I believe. Let me look at I got to check on Penn State and Northwestern. So Nebraska's moved up to 49 in the NET rankings, which still seems a little bit low to me. I mean, that still seems like, I don't know, Ohio State's up in the top 30, which is good. That's where Nebraska needs them to be, but it seems like Nebraska should be a little higher with all the quality wins that they've got up to this point.
I think when you look at the November part of their schedule with some of the easier games, maybe that's what's dragging them down a little bit. But you're right about the quality wins.
So Penn State's 65th in the NET rankings. Northwestern is 56th. So that's both of those road games will count as quad ones. Michigan is 18th. Maryland is 16th. So 2 top 20 teams coming into the vault in the next couple of weeks, and then 2 basically top 75 teams on the road. So, I definitely could see Nebraska winning, the games at home. I think it's, if you find a way to split those 4 games, I think that should be the goal. But, who's to say this team can't go 3-1 during that stretch? I think Michigan's going to be tough. Maryland's obviously playing really well right now. Michigan's going to be tough because they've got the 2 7-footers, and if you don't have Berkey, that's going to make it a little tougher to match up with them. But at the same time, you could always try Juwan Gary out there at the 4, and because then one of their 7-footers is going to have to guard him. And I'm not sure if he can guard Danny Wolf, the kind of the 7-foot playmaker for Michigan, the power forward, but I don't know who else you're going to put on him, because Andrew Morgan potentially, but the thing about Danny Wolf is he plays like a point guard, even though he's 6'11" or 7 foot. So Juwan Gary might be the best matchup for him anyways. I'm not really sure how that's going to, Berkey would be. I would definitely give Berkey a try on him if he's available, but if he's not available, that's going to be a real tough matchup for Nebraska.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting because, I was thinking about this the other day. I know you get frustrated with Fred Hoiberg at times, and I know there are some things that, aggravate Nebraska fans, but I'm not sure that there's a better coach at making adjustments for this program than Fred Hoiberg. He does, when he figures it out, he does figure it out. It's not just a quick one-game fix, something clicks. And this time around, I think it was, less help defense and, more inside play from Juwan Gary and stuff like that. So as much as people get annoyed with, some of the lapses that Fred Hoiberg has, he is still finding a way.
And I think, the playing his son, playing Sam Hoiberg, putting him in the starting lineup, that's been one of the biggest adjustments. Yeah. And because, the way this team kind of plays defense, like you need guys to kind of hustle out there, and they were over helping a little bit, but I feel like him as a defensive kind of stalwart has really helped. They went back with Raleigh, and Raleigh, I thought Raleigh Wooster played pretty decently yesterday. Yeah. I think, he should be the point guard of this team right now. Just it's tough to put. Bryce is going to do that a lot. Bryce is going to bring the ball up a lot, but you just need somebody else to kind of take that load off him a little bit, because he's already got to carry the load offensively. And really, that's the thing, is like Gary and Bryce Williams almost have to combine for 40 points like every game, because there's just not enough consistent scoring elsewhere. I was thinking last night, man, what if Rink Mass was on this team? How good would this team be?
I was just thinking that right now, actually. A great minds think alike. That's going to be scary next year, I think. Scary in a good way. And, obviously they'll miss Bryce and Gary, but having Rink back will be huge next year. And I think there's enough of a core roster to where Nebraska basketball can still be good. And at this point, we've seen Fred's work in the transfer portal, so I trust that he can get some immediate impact contributors next season.
Yeah, the one thing Fred Hoiberg, he's great at evaluating players. He knows ball, and he go back and look at his comments about Bryce Williams when they got him from Charlotte. He basically said what he told you what Bryce Williams was back then, and he was right about it. So, they landed Gary in the portal, they landed Rink Mass in the portal, they landed Tominaga in the portal. So he's found a knack.
Sam Greasel, even Derek Walker, dating back to those guys.
Yeah, and Berkey should be back next year. So you've got him and Rink in the front court, which I think is a nice starting point. You're going to lose.
Connor.
Yeah, you're going to lose. Yeah, you'll have a season. You're going to lose
Connor.
Hoiberg, Bryce, and Gary.
Those will be big losses, yeah.
And Raleigh, and then Ulis, I believe, will be gone too. I think. I'm not quite sure though, based on that whole NCAA thing, but I think he lost a year of eligibility. I'd have to double check on that. At any rate, though, they're gonna need a point guard, and then they're gonna need a lot of scoring. They do have some talented guys, though. They have Gavin Griffiths hasn't done much this year, but he was a highly recruited guy, so maybe
Yeah.
he can step in next year. And then Nick Janowski from the kid from Wisconsin, he obviously is going to have a chance to step in next year. And then I'm sure they will be finding a couple guys in the portal, but at least they've got an all Big Ten piece to build around in Rink Mass, and I think another pretty impressive big guy in Berkey. So those are two nice pieces, and Freddie transfer portals figured it out, so I'm confident he'll get some pieces in place.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so, do you think that Connor moves to a starting role next season? Because I love his contributions off the bench, but sometimes it drives me crazy that he's not starting. And I get he's maybe not the best defender, but at times, but he's still got that scoring spark when he's on his game.
Yeah, sometimes I do wonder about him starting too, but I feel like the way they've got it staggered now is they're just kind of trying to say, have something off, some type of scoring threat when Bryce and Gary need to rest. But yeah, I do think Connor will start next year. We'll have to see. I guess it's possible that they bring in, another wing type player like a Bryce Williams or Gary who could start over him, but they would have to be pretty high level players. I think I think that Connor has shot the ball pretty well this year for the most part. I mean, he's been up and down a little bit, but those are kind of just shooters, I mean,
the whole team has been, quite frankly. So
yeah, like you look at, he had 4 or 5 against Washington. So, he's averaging 11 points per game this year off the bench. And he's hit 58 threes. So, he hit 69 as a freshman, only 20 last year, but he's hit 58 threes this year and he's shooting 40%. So like, you really can't, you can't say a bad thing about what Connor Essegian has done he's been exactly who the Huskers, wanted and needed him to be.
I don't really count last year because the Badgers were so loaded at the, the guard position, and he kind of got buried. But I am surprised overall at how well Bryce Williams has played this season. Like, I knew he was going to be a good player. I mean, he had the stats and stuff, but just how well he's able to shoot and how well he's able to finish has really, really surprised me. I didn't think, I knew he was a high-level player, but I didn't think he would be this good. And that's not a knock on Bryce at all. It speaks to how much he's been able to carry this Nebraska offense.
Yeah, it's been impressive. And, 47% from overall field goal percentage, 35% from 3, 53% on 2s, shooting 90% from the line. So, and he's also dishing out 2.8 assists per game, a career high there. I'm getting a steal per game, 4.2 rebounds. So, he's really, like at Charlotte, he was averaging 1 assist per game. At Nebraska, last year it was 2.5. This year, almost 3. So, this is an impressive player. It'll be exciting to see what he can do at the next level. And I'm excited to see the next, bracketology projection, because Nebraska was listed among the next 4 buys. And I'm wondering if they're going to be just off the bubble completely. Now, I'm not saying that they're in the NCAA tournament, but in terms of where the bracket is right now, they would be, not one of the bubble teams. So as long as they kept winning, they would be, comfortably in the tournament.
So which one do you trust the most? Because I see a lot of different projections and, a lot of different brackets put out. Which one do you give the most credence to?
I still defer to Lenardi from ESPN. I think he's pretty accurate, but I like to look at that one, and then I check out Bracket Matrix because it goes through all the brackets. So I think it kind of gives you a good picture. I think there's 86 brackets right now, and Nebraska's, I think, projected to make 81 of them or something. So I think that can kind of give you a good overview, but I generally go with the ESPN one. Just, I don't know, the Fox Sports one seems kind of off. DeCourcy, his is all right. Jerry Palm from CBS is pretty solid too, but I just think Lenardi, I mean, he's the guy who started it, and I feel like I don't know, I still feel like he does the best work.
I saw one bracket, I think it was a week ago, where we were matched up with Louisville. And I'm like, I don't want Louisville. Please, I don't want Louisville. Let's slow down a little bit there, but I'm hoping we can move out of the Louisville range, so to speak. And because last year with Texas A&M, that was so tough. That was a tough matchup. So I'm not hoping we get an easy game because it's the NCAA tournament and anything can happen. I would like a nice challenge, but just please no Louisville.
Yeah, Louisville will be tough, but it'll be interesting. Just it'd be great just to get into the tournament for this squad
and win a game. I mean, we've been in the tournament. Let's win a game.
Yeah, that would be. It's time. So a couple football things here before we wrap up the show. So it looks like the coaching staff will finally be completely finalized this week. Terry Braden obviously coming over from the Chiefs after their loss in the Super Bowl yesterday, and Mike Eckler is expected to be announced as special teams coach this week. It should be mentioned Ed Foley actually still is on the coaching staff. He's been moved into like a recruiting role. I think I wanted to say shoot, there was a name for it and I'm blanking on it, but essentially he's going to be kind of like an ambassador for the program and focus more on recruiting, which I think will be a great job for him. And frankly, I'm happy that he was able to find
Yeah.
something on the staff. He's still a good coach. I don't think Ed Foley's a terrible coach. It's just, there's circumstance, there's players, and that
Yeah.
situation didn't work out, but I still think he could bring positive things to this program.
As soon as he got here, he was busting his tail recruiting the state of Nebraska. And I think that really spoke to how hard Ed Foley works. And, the circumstances were tough, sometimes beyond his control with special teams. But there's no doubt that he works hard and he recruited hard. I remember when we were talking with Tristan Alvano, he had nothing but good things to say about Coach Foley. And so I think a recruiting role is absolutely perfect for him. I'm glad he's on staff because I really do think he's a great guy. And I really do think he's an asset to the program. And I think that asset that he brings is his ability to recruit. So I'm very happy he's remaining on the staff.
And then so I think overall, I think Rhule did a nice job of putting the staff together. I think it's a really, really quality staff. I mean, Eckler running special teams, John Butler running the defense. Obviously, Dana Holgerson, I think, is having him, running the offense, I think, is a boon for Nebraska. So feeling pretty good about where this team is at. And on that note, some of the odds have been released over the past week, and Nebraska actually has the sixth best odds to win the Big Ten, behind obviously Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, and then I think USC is the fifth place team. I might be wrong on that, but I think that was what I saw. At any rate, it's interesting that Nebraska checks in at number 6, and I just wanted to gauge, what do you think Nebraska's chances are of actually like winning the Big Ten next year? Do you think, the odds there are too high, too low? Like, what are your estimations about their finish next season?
I don't want to fall into this trap because it seems like we do this every damn year, but I think they're pretty good, honestly. Like when you look at the talent, when you look at the wide receiver talent, when you look at the adjustments they made on the offensive line, and this is not a shot at all. When you look at Dylan Raiola and a little bit of the weight he's lost this offseason because it's been noticeable, and that's positive. I think that can make him a better quarterback, and I think this is a very favorable schedule this year. So I would maybe honestly put them above Michigan, but we'll see. We'll see how things go there, and I think this is a big year for Matt Rhule. I don't think it's if he doesn't do this, he's fired type of year, because I think the bowl game bought him a little bit of a grace period. But I think this is a very favorable schedule, and 8 or 9 wins is not too much to ask, in my opinion, especially when you consider some of the teams that made the college football playoff this past season. I think Nebraska, I'm not going to say they win it all or they make the championship or whatever, but I think they could, make it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they could have a chance. I mean, they have a favorable opportunity and they have a bright young quarterback. I do think if, like, to your point, I think if this team goes like 7-5, then I think fans are going to be pretty upset. Like, I don't think that's not going to be good enough with this. I mean, just like, Matt Rhule is this big time coach. I mean, and he, I mean, you can say whatever you want about him, but there's pretty high expectations, and they've spent a lot of money. And they've added a lot of key players. They got Raiola. Like I feel like they've got all the pieces in place, and I feel like, they've made a lot of moves. Like you don't go pay Rocco Spindler what you paid him, and not to be in a position to win. Now, I don't think they paid him as much as Virginia was going to pay him. I think they paid him a little bit less, but still, I mean, they made some big investments, and I think it's because, they know that they're close, and they were close last year. I mean, I mentioned that the other day on our show that, if you look at if they're able to seal the deal against Ohio State and Iowa and Illinois, which isn't they should have. They led all 3 of those games in the fourth quarter and should have won. I mean, they were a play or two away in all of those games from winning. And if they win those games, like this team's probably in the college football playoff at 9-3, assuming you'd beaten Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like maybe not, because if they would have beaten Ohio State and Ohio State lost to Michigan, like that win maybe doesn't mean as much, but they at least would have been, in the top 15. They would have been in the conversation because Illinois was a ranked team for most of last season. So like if everything else played out the same way and Nebraska just wins those games, like they're at least in the conversation. And I think they should be a better team next year. So
I think so too, because I think the defensive scheme, for one thing, is going to be a little bit better.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think also the offensive line is going to be a little bit better. And there are still questions at running back, but I do think you want to take the training wheels off of, Parker and Booth. Maybe I don't know exactly what they're going to do there, but I think when you look at how much Troy Dannon has been committed to investing in NIL and getting players here, it's night and day from Trev Alberts. And you wrote a very good article about that over on Husker Big Red. I think it was last week, and basically saying that Troy Dannon has adapted where Trev Alberts didn't, and I think that should definitely be noted as well when you look at building this roster.
Yeah, I think that is a good point with Troy Dannon, and I do feel that even though we were worried about when Trev Alberts left, I do think it was a good thing for the program just because Troy Dannon seems much more Troy Dannon cares about Nebraska. He cares about the results on the field. He doesn't care about his own resume and accomplishments like Trev Alberts. So, those are the things that make me feel good about this team. And like you said, I do think the defense is going to be better. I think maybe the run defense might not be quite as good, because they don't have that Nash and Ty Robinson in there. But I think the pass rush is going to be better. Because I think Noweri and I think Dason McCullough, some of these guys are actually better pass rushers. And so I feel like, the actual like affecting of the quarterback is going to be more consistent this year.
I don't think their run defense was, that great at times last season, to be honest.
Well, no, I mean, in that times it wasn't either. No, but yeah, I still do worry about them not having, like a big Nash, but they really didn't replace Ty or Nash. I know they've got Riley Van Poppel, who's kind of the replacement for Ty. But that also makes me think maybe they're not going to play, as much of a three-man front as they did.
Maybe
last
like
year.
Jalen George. I mean, not that.
Yeah, I think he'll make an impact for sure.
But yeah, no, I don't think I think they're going to play like a different style of defense. I'm hoping it's a little bit better in terms of defending, because there were some games where they just could not defend the run at all, and it was frustrating. And so, I think you're going to see a little bit more pressure off the edge and things like that too, which is going to be exciting. I know Tony White tried to disguise coverages and stuff like that, but I think this defense is going to benefit guys like McGahee and Shavers. I mean, you saw the boom that Shavers was laying on the BC offensive players during the bowl game, and I think he's going to be in a position to have a really big year.
Yeah, I like Shavers. I think Shavers is going to be the best linebacker the Huskers have had since Levante David. And then you've got McGahee, I think, is a good pass rusher. McCullough's a good pass rusher. Noweri, George. I like all those guys. You still got Cameron Leonard and Van Poppel. I do think that people are underestimating the addition of Gabe Brooks, the dude from Mississippi State. I think he's going to help this team this year. And he's 6'4", 290 pounds. And he was going to play for them last year. I don't know exactly. There was like an injury, and then he kind of redshirted, and I'm not sure if he had an issue with the staff or whatever, but like he was expected to be on their two deep for an SEC program. So I really think a guy who's 6'4" probably can get up to 300 pounds, who used to be an edge, like that could be a really exciting prospect as a defensive tackle type. And so it wouldn't shock me at all to see him get on the field. And I think this front seven is going to be really big and really long and really active. And they had a couple guys like that last year with like Ty and Nash, but I just feel like that length at defensive end is going to be much more noticeable this year.
One of the things I'm excited about is a combination of special teams coach Mike Eckler and the returnability of Andrew Marshall. I mean, one of Mike Eckler's specialties was, return yards and punt return yards. And, Andrew Marshall is a tremendous returner. So I'm curious to see what Marshall can bring to the return game and what the return game looks like overall, because I know all of us are screaming about them them not returning kicks or anything like that, and so I'm excited to see that element hopefully brought to the table, because that's one of Mike Eckler's calling cards.
Yeah, and like also the ability to like have some kicks blocked might be nice, or not have kicks blocked, either way. So I think
I
that's
prefer
going to
not
be,
have kicks blocked at this
yeah.
point, honestly.
It would be not like we used to block some kicks. So, it was
Yeah.
just, like I said, teams that win are go on special teams. I mean, it's, we've seen it how many times that special teams has doomed this program. I mean, it hurt us twice last year. I mean, if we don't get bad snaps and miss kicks against Iowa and Illinois, they probably win 8 games. So, like, it's a very, I mean, just right that. Like, if we had Mike Eckler on staff last year, maybe they win those 2 games. It's hard to say, it's hard to blame Ed Foley because the players too, but,
Yeah,
you know,
that's not a Foley thing. I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying in general.
right. But that does show Nebraska's like that close to winning 8 games, and they were that close to beating Ohio State. So this program isn't that far off. And so I do think that the expectations are going to be raised, and like 6-6, 7-5, that's not going to be good enough next year. I mean, with everything that they've invested in this program, like that's just not good enough. They got to me, they have to at least win, 8 games and kind of be somewhat of a contender for the playoff.
Even 8, I would kind of be a little bit shaky. I'd love 9, but I'd take 8. But I think with this schedule, 9 is not a ridiculous ask.
So before we wrap up here, there was one other thing we wanted to talk about. So they've On3, well, On3 released a list of top 25 head coaches, college football head coaches. And I want to say there was maybe 2 lists of these, because I don't know if Ari Wasserman and Andy Staples both put out lists, or if there was just one, or if there was at any rate, doesn't really matter. But Matt Rhule didn't make any of the top 25 lists that I have seen from coaches. So what do you think about that? Do you think Matt Rhule's a top 25 coach in college football?
Yeah, 100%. I just look at the guys that are on that I don't think should be on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if Sharon Moore should be 17.
I mean, here's my thing though with Sharon Moore is that he does have two wins over top 11 teams. And he did land the number 1 quarterback in this class. I mean, he landed the number 6 recruit. I think there's definitely some projection there with Sharon Moore,
Yeah,
but I
that's
mean,
fair.
even when he was the acting head coach, I know Jim Harbaugh, it was like Jim's team, but he still won 2 top 10 games, as the acting head coach. So I think that maybe they're like factoring it in that they've already seen him win some of these big games. But I see what you're saying. He's only got 1 8-5 season, and it really wasn't great for most of it. So that is I think that's more of a projection. But who are some of the other guys on there?
Jeff Brom at 24, and Jeff Brom is a good coach, but Matt Rhule. Jeff Brom was 8-4 last year. Matt Rhule was 7-5. So does that make Jeff Brom automatically eligible for this list?
I mean, he did get Purdue to the Big Ten title game.
I actually love Louisville and Jeff Brom, honestly, if we're being completely honest.
Yeah,
I
that was a
love
really
Jeff
good
Brom.
hire. Yeah, he was a good hire. I mean, I could probably buy Jeff Brom, but again, I don't know that his resume is that much better, because Rhule got Baylor to a Big 12 championship game. So like I do think that they're probably the same. Like, I mean, if Jeff Brom's claim to fame is getting Purdue to that 1 Big 10 title game, like his resume is not that much better than Rhule's, honestly. Although he might have more like I think they did beat an undefeated Michigan State team a couple years ago, so like he might have more like higher ranked wins than Rhule, but it's pretty close, I would say.
Brian Kelly at 8. I'm not saying Rhule should be 8 or anything, but Brian Kelly at 8 seems a little bit too high.
He should not be number 8. That is way too high.
I would put Josh Hipple and even Kalen DeBoer is 9. I'd almost put DeBoer over Kelly, maybe. I don't know. But
I'd definitely take Kalen DeBoer over him.
Yeah.
I'd definitely take Kalen DeBoer over Kelly if I had my choice. I would take Heupel over him too. So
I'd take Lincoln Riley over Kelly, to be honest with you. And Lincoln Riley's 18. So I mean, maybe that's my bias. I just hate Brian Kelly. I'm not going to even be shy about it. I think he's extremely overrated.
The one that I think is terrible though. Why is Deion Sanders number 7? That is ridiculous.
I'm looking at the one on Andy Staples, and Sanders is 21.
Oh, okay. So okay, I looked up this one. Okay, this is from Ari Wasserman. So they each have their
Okay.
own list.
Okay. We can compare lists. Yeah.
So here's the Ari Wasserman one has Smart number 1, Day 2, Landing 3, Dab Freeman is 5, Dabo 6, Deion Sanders is 7, which is insane.
Okay, so Andy
Um,
Staples has Smart at 1, Day at 2, Sweeney at 3, Dabo Sweeney, Steve Sarkisian 4, Marcus Freeman 5, Dan Lanning 6, James Franklin 7, Brian Kelly 8, Kalen DeBoer at 9, and then Lane Kiffin at 10.
yeah, that's kind of an interesting
Dabo
list.
Sweeney at 3 is kind of crazy. I mean, I get what he's done previous, but without Trevor Lawrence, he's been absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I can buy him being like in the top 10, but not 3. That seems definitely seems crazy to me. I agree. I would
Let
say
me look at Ari's one real quick.
I agree with Ari's top 3, and I would say Kirby Smart is 1, Ryan Day's 2, and I think Dan Lanning is 3. Although it'd be hard. I think Sark and Lanning are really close, really close. And that's the other thing too. What has Dan Lanning achieved? He's gotten Oregon to a lot of like big games that they've lost. They did beat Ohio State, but that's like, they had like his first 2 years there, they had chances to get into the 14 playoff and choked it away by losing to Washington. So,
Yeah.
he's lost a lot of big games that his teams were supposed to win. I mean, 2 years ago, when they had Bo Nix, they were like a big
Yep.
favorite and got beat by Oregon State. They lost twice to Washington last year. And then this year, they were a big favorite, against Ohio State, and they just got absolutely embarrassed. I mean, that was one of the most embarrassing performances a number 1 team has ever put together. Like that Rose Bowl game reminded me of the Miami-Nebraska Rose Bowl game. And Oregon wasn't supposed to be Nebraska in that game. Like they embarrassed themselves. And so I don't know if I could put him above Sark, to be honest.
Ari Wasserman's list is Bill Belichick at 21, which is interesting because that you're clearly going off his NFL experience at that point. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't put him anywhere on any of these lists yet until we see how he does. But yeah, some of these lists are interesting.
Yeah, the Colorado is crazy to me though. Like, I mean, he's saying he's unquestionably one of the few human beings on planet Earth that could have had Colorado on the verge of the college football playoff in year 2, and I get that, but it's also because okay, how good would Deion Sanders be if Shadur Sanders wasn't his son? Like, to be honest,
Well,
like
we'll
how
see
good?
next year.
Yeah, I mean, I really think like, yeah, I mean, I guess I can give him some credit for that, when he got Travis Hunter there, but like they still played in a weak conference and they only won 9 games and they got their ass kicked by Nebraska.
You
So
don't
like,
hire Marshall Faulk if you think you're going to have a good passing attack next year.
yeah, like I just what win does show me the win that like, proves that Prime deserves to be this ranked where he is. Like there isn't one. I don't feel like he's had like sure he won a SWAC championship, but I feel like I feel like if Nebraska played in the Big 12 last year, they would have won 9 or 10 games easily. So, and I'm not trying to diss the Big 12, but Colorado came to Nebraska and they got their asses kicked. It wasn't even a game. It wasn't even competitive. Nebraska flat out dominated them and they still almost made the playoffs. So,
one of Tommy Hill's last great games, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sad.
Like, so, I mean, I get it, but I mean, the Colorado fans that are like trying to talk smack on Nebraska, like you're absolute morons. You got destroyed. Nebraska emasculated you on national television. Like, hooray for you for winning 9 games in a junior varsity conference, but get out of here trying to talk trash on Nebraska. Like, we have bragging rights on you till the next time we play, and we'll probably, clown your ass that time too. So just shut up.
One of the things I do like about Wasserman's list, though, is Kyle Whittingham at 8. Kyle Whittingham is one of the most consistent and underrated coaches, in my opinion, in college football. So I'm glad to see him get his flowers.
Yeah, he is really good, and like honestly, he was always like my a dream, coach, because I think he's. I agree with you. He's one of the best.
3 losing seasons in 20 years, like that is hard to do in college football.
Yeah, and he followed Urban Meyer with there at Utah, did a great job, and then what really impressed me is they went from the Mountain West to the Pac-12 and eventually won Pac-12 championships. So you don't see a lot of programs kind of going from one to a new conference winning championships. So
and then I do like Marcus Freeman too. I really do like Marcus Freeman. I think a lot of my hate for Notre Dame stem from Brian Kelly, but I do like Marcus Freeman, so I'm glad he's in the top 5. But other than that, these lists should have at at least the Andy Staples list should have Matt Rhule on it. In my opinion, I feel like honestly both of those lists should, but Matt Rhule deserves some credit for what he's been able to do at Nebraska, because I think a lot of these national writers forget that he had to basically like restock the program. The program was bare in terms of recruiting, and he came in immediately and flipped the program around and restocked the program with talent in a matter of 2 years. And not only has he restocked the program with talent, but he's also adjusted his recruiting style to fit today's transfer portal kind of vibe, or transfer portal direction. And I think he deserves some credit for that too. But I don't know what it'll take, but Matt Rhule definitely deserves more national recognition.
I think if they get an 8 or 9 win season next year, I think people will start to give him his flowers a little bit. So hopefully he delivers that, man. It's been such a long time. We've all been waiting for it. But he's done a great job getting this program to where it is, and they've got the pieces are in place. Like, I feel very confident that the pieces are in place, and but I mean, I'm always confident, and that's just how I am. So
I think there's reason to be confident. I'm excited to see a full year of a Dana Holgerson offense. That's exciting to me.
And
some of the
to see
yeah,
and to see Raiola get a full off season with Holgerson, and it's gonna be exciting. It really is.
Dylan Raiola and Cortez Mills, because I do think there's a chance that Mills plays a lot next year.
Yeah, I do too. I 100% agree. Yeah, he's
Cortez
a special
Mills,
player.
Ja'Cory Barney out there. Then you have an Isaiah Hunter. Then you have a healthy Carter Nelson at tight end, and you have a roller. Yeah,
and Hardly Gilmore. Don't forget about Hardly Gilmore either. Yep. So it's gonna be. And I've been playing the 2025 season in NCAA football, and I've been tearing it up with Quinn Ives as my number 2. So I mean,
okay, maybe that's a good omen.
Man, he's been a weapon in the passing game and the running game.
I think he's going to be really good, honestly, and I think that's why they haven't aggressively decided to go after a transfer portal running back. That and the fact that EJ probably threatened to leave if they did, so that definitely helps too. But I think all joking aside, Ives is going to be really, really good.
And I like Jamarian Parker a lot, and sometimes you just have to trust your evaluations. You just have to trust your eye. And so at any rate, all right, you guys, well, we thought it would be a short show. It turned into a long show, so that's how it happens sometimes. So thanks for sticking with us if you did. If you haven't, please hit the like button, hit subscribe, get into the comment section, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.